Answer.
Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. President Trump speaking at the Future Investment Initiative confab said we're closer than ever to remaking the Middle East in a way that is positive for both the region and America.
As you know, we're gathered at a moment of bold action and historic decision to make America and our allies safer and stronger, more prosperous, more successful than ever before. That's what's happening. Tonight, we're closer than ever to the rise of the Middle East that is finally free at last from Iranian terror, aggression, and nuclear blackmail. That's what's happened. It was nuclear blackmail for years and years. And beyond that, it was blackmail, period. Under my leadership, America is ending the threat posed by this radical regime, decimating Iran's capabilities with Operation Epic Fury, something that nobody's ever seen anything quite like it. We have the most powerful military in the world by far. I built it in my first term. Remember, I said $1 trillion. They all said, what do you mean $1 trillion? $1 trillion. Every year, another trillion, the next, another trillion. We have the best people. We have by far the best equipment. We have weapons that nobody's ever seen before. We have weapons that nobody even knows about, except for a few of us. For 47 years, Iran has been known as the bully of the Middle East, but they are not the bully any longer.
But there's still some matters to attend to, clearly, because there's been no cessation of hostilities, even as negotiations are happening in some form or fashion, maybe with the facilitation of the Pakistanis, at least in part. At that same confab, though, Trump also spoke of the opening of the Strait of Hormuz, which is on the to-do list, or so is potentially renaming the strait, apparently.
We're negotiating now, and it'd be great if we could do something, but they have to open it up. They have to open up the Strait of Hormuz. Excuse me. I'm so sorry. Such a terrible mistake. The fake news will say, he accidentally said, no. There's no accidents with me, not too many. If there were, we'd have a major story.
Okay. Jonathan Karl over at This Week, representing the D.C. press corps, had whatever trans brown graduate produces his show try to come up with something intelligent in terms of an overall commentary on Trump's military strategy, if you will, the invocation of Sun Tzu. I think von Clausewitz actually would be more appropriate for the discussion, but we'll talk that over with Stephen Bucci. But this is the argument that Karl is advancing on behalf of the D.C. press corps. Is it chaos? Is it deception?
To This Week. In The Art of War, Sun Tzu wrote that a leader's plans must be as dark and impenetrable as night. Well, The Art of War may not be Donald Trump's playbook, but on day 30 of the Iran war, his plans sure seem dark and impenetrable. Just consider his words over the past 10 days. On March 20th, he declared that he was close to meeting his military objectives and considering winding down our great military efforts in the Middle East. The very next day, he announced a major escalation, threatening to hit and obliterate Iran's power plants if the Strait of Hormuz wasn't opened within 48 hours from this exact point in time. On Monday, within hours of that deadline, he announced he had had very good and productive talks with Iran about a complete and total resolution to the war. And with that, he set a new deadline, giving Iran 5 days to make a deal. 4 days later, Trump offered up yet another extension and yet another deadline, saying he was pausing the threatened obliteration again, this time for 10 days. In a telephone interview with Fox News, he claimed that Iran had asked for an extension, but a slightly shorter one.
They asked for 7, and I gave them 10. You got 10 days, and they were very thankful about that.
So are they speaking? Iran has denied that there are talks, but there do appear to be messages exchanged through intermediaries. Listening to President Trump's words, at any given moment, it sounds like the war is about to end or it's about to intensify, saying at one point this week, if the Iranians don't give in, quote, we'll keep bombing our little hearts out. The reality on the ground, however, is affected by more than a president's words. The military force is growing. The attacks from both Israel and the United States haven't slowed down. And Iran's response to it all has shaken the global economy.
All right, one more representative to be heard from in terms of the expanse of political posturing here. Madeline Dean is a Dem socialist from Pennsylvania. She's on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, remarkably. This is what she had to say for her MSNBC benefactors about Trump and Iran. So this is effectively the neo-Marxist Party's position on the war in Iran.
Take a look at the rubble. This president's legacy is going to be rubble around the globe. And in that rubble are dead soldiers and dead children. On day one, we were horrified, weren't we, that this president's initial strike, sadly, by accident, I'm certain, included a girls' school. More than 100 children dead there. Will we ever forget the photograph of the dug-out grave sites for these babies? This is a president whose legacy will be rubble around the globe. And he is being briefed by people who are not serious, who are not taking into account that we are now less safe. The Middle East is now a war zone. We have military members, my constituents, over in that region in harm's way. This is a very unserious president who tires of things so quickly. The only good news out of this is he'll get so tired that, please God, the war will end and he'll move on to something else. Please God, we get our military members home and safe. But what was the purpose of this war in Iran? What did he do? He tore up the JCPOA that had some oversight in terms of enrichment of uranium and a nuclear weapon. It had oversight of missile systems. It had some controls on this regime. What has he done now? He's made us less safe, and he's made everything more expensive.
For more on all this, Stephen Bucci served America for 3 decades as Army Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official, now a visiting fellow in the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Stephen, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me back on the show.
So Sun Tzu or von Clausewitz, when it comes to Trump here, is this about deception or is this about friction and the unavoidable risk of war?
It's both. Those guys are not as in conflict as a lot of people like to say, but there is a desire for confusion on the part of your enemy or uncertainty on the part of your enemy, unless you want to send them a message that is so certain that he just gives up. That's the whole point of the terms. But friction does occur everywhere. The enemy gets a vote, as we like to say today. But look, the president, for the congresswoman there to say there was no point to this war is a lie, and she knows it's a lie. To say that the original Iran nuclear deal was, that was fine, it did everything we needed it to do, that's a bunch of cracks.
Right, oversight, regime oversight, yeah, right.
It didn't have a provision anywhere about missile development and missile production. That's another lie. I'm really sorry we hit that school. Tremendously sorry we hit that school. But maybe the IRGC shouldn't have taken one of their old buildings, turned it into a school, and left it in the middle of a military facility like that. I'm sorry if our intel guys missed one, that something had changed and we didn't get the memo on it from Iran. It's a tragedy for sure. It's not like it's our fault. This is like giving Hamas a pass when they build bunkers and things underneath hospitals and say, oh, what horrific people they are. They bomb hospitals. Yeah, well, don't put your missile sites right next to the hospitals. That one was a really classic leftist diatribe that's based in little or no fact whatsoever. Look, President Trump is the big negotiator. That's his thing. And the way you negotiate is you offer some carrot and you offer some stick. And he does that all the time. I'm still not convinced that, we're going to invade mainland Iran with the ground troops that are over there, though we're getting more and more people. I think he is still messaging the Iranians, one, for the people to rise up and fight back, which, by the way, they've started doing in some really significant ways, ambushing IRGC forces and the Bucci people. They're fighting back. Why? Because they think we are in this to help them win. Two, as those forces start to grow, there's more and more conflict among the leadership in Iran. Right now, there's a lot of reports about big disagreements between the president and the IRGC guys, who, by the way, we got their boss again the other day, or the Israelis did.
Yeah.
So there's a great conflict going on. This thing could end in a day or two. I don't like to be that optimistic, but we're still within the original timeline that President Trump gave everybody, at least the outside the 6-week mark. It's not like this has failed. Is it difficult? I really feel badly that the prices of gas are back up to 2/3 of what they were under Joe Biden, when there wasn't anything going on that was beneficial. I wish they were down lower. I don't like to pay for extra money for gas either. But given a couple of weeks or a month or two of high gas prices to remove the threat of Iran on America, on our allies, and to free the Iranian people, I'm sorry, suck it up, America. You can do it. All right?
So as it pertains to potential ground operations, you think, and the USS Tripoli making its way, you think that that's still a part of the brinkmanship that Trump is playing?
It is totally a part of the brinkmanship. It doesn't mean he's not going to use them. He may decide at the end of that effort to say, okay, put them in. But right now, their presence is adding pressure, even though they haven't fired a shot yet from a ground troop. Their presence there and the increasing presence is really ratcheting up the pressure on the Iranian leadership, is ratcheting up the hope of the Iranian people, and all of that works to our advantage.
When you have a report, I mean, if this report is true, that's always the caveat, that Marco Rubio told our allies, unnamed, that the campaign will go on for another 2 to 4 weeks. If that were true, what does that say to you about what the administration is pursuing and how it's pursuing it? Does that say 2 to 4 weeks where we completely decimate the defense industrial complex there and such that whichever regime remains will not be able to, will have a generation of rebuilding to do effectively? Or does that mean, we're already substantially to the point I just described, and now we think we can get this the remnants of the previous regime, which constitute the current regime, out in that time frame?
I think it's the second. They're still aiming for that, the removal of the regime in that time period. It seems possible and likely that that's the direction we're trending into. And the Iranian authorities are getting very desperate. They're starting to Shanghai people to try and build a new reserve force. They're calling it the John Fada, which means sacrifice your life. That's the name of their campaign to try and recruit these people. I'm doing air quotes on the radio. They're at a desperate moment right now, so it's very close. Now, that's not saying they won't make the decision. Okay, we got to destroy the infrastructure to do it. We don't want to do that because our hope is we're going to get a new regime in there that we can work with, and we'd rather have less rebuilding than more. But if it takes the bigger amount of destruction of the industrial base, you know what? If a new regime comes in there that's amenable to working with us, we'll be the first ones to help them rebuild it. But we cannot allow the old regime to stay there because they're true believers. They're just going to start rebuilding and not rebuilding hospitals and schools first. They're going to start rebuilding missile sites and missile production facilities again. And we just can't allow that.
How should we interpret the reports that Israel is expanding its military operation against Hezbollah in Lebanon? Meanwhile, the Houthis that were on the sidelines, the terrorists from Yemen, that were on the sidelines previously sent missiles in the direction of Israel. And we also had some U.S. troops wounded in an Iranian strike in Saudi Arabia. Is that, I mean, do those things signify anything more substantial than just the nature of the variables and the actors in the region? Does it say something about the larger mission and the success of it at present, or are those just sort of ancillary matters, variables that could go either way, but they're on the margins?
They are not at the heart of the issue, but they are important, particularly for Israel. Look, Israel thought they had convinced Hamas to stop doing the crazy stuff, Hezbollah, and they did for a while. They did not get involved. Then, obviously, Iran said, look, if you guys want us to help you at all in the future, you got to get into this. So they did. The Israelis and the Lebanese said, you know what? We tried to be nice. The Lebanese said, you guys come and do what you need to do, but please don't kill the rest of us because we're not part of this. It's just Hezbollah. Get them. And they even grabbed the Iranian ambassador over the weekend and booted him out of the country in a very, very undiplomatic way, by the way. So the Lebanese are standing up, and they're happy. They don't like to see their country damaged, but they realize it's not Israel's fault. It's Hezbollah's fault. That's Israel's issue, and I think they'll get that under control. The Houthis, the Houthis are a danger to everybody because they're kind of loony, even by Middle Eastern, terrorist group standards. And I don't know what held them up to this most recent start of their efforts, but I'm glad they did hold up. But now they're going to get involved, and I think they're going to pay an awful price for it. That's their call. But the Saudis will be happy to get rid of those guys because they're a threat to Saudi Arabia. And we talked the Saudis out of really beating on them a couple of years ago. I think the Saudis are going, man, you should have let us take these characters out back when we were doing it before. The unity around the Middle East is just tremendous, man, against Iran, and to remove these guys who have caused the disruption of the region for decades. They need to go. Everybody in the region knows they need to go. The only people that don't are, American leftists and that extra group on the right here that are loony anti-Israel isolationists.
As we've, you see the videos that are distributed online of the fighting that's going on. I mean, it's been really remarkable to see what the American military can do. I saw over the weekend, the Iranians launch a swarm of drones, and you just see over the sky, wherever that was, where they intercepted them. I mean, it was like the challenge stage in a game of Galaga, which I was very good at, by the way. Like there was 24 of them, and they just got picked off right in a line, like a video game. Mm-hmm. But and there was this big piece in 60 Minutes last night about drone warfare and so on and so forth, trying to sort of whip up fear about the Iranians' capacity to use drone warfare. And it doesn't seem to me that we are flat-footed on this. By the same token, we had this incident at Barksdale Air Force Base earlier this month. This is Louisiana, where swarms of identified drones loitered over the base for about a week. It sounds a little bit like the Chinese spy balloon. And this is the headquarters of the Air Force's Global Strike Command, which is responsible for the nation's nuclear intercontinental ballistic missiles and strategic bomber forces. So the concern, and I haven't heard like a complete explanation in terms of what that was and what they think happened and what that says about homeland vulnerabilities. The concern is that you had potentially threatening drones, because they weren't ours, apparently, over a critical complex with impunity over several days. So what's your take on that?
I have not seen a complete explanation of who the drones belong to and what exactly they were doing. Were they just surveillance, or did they have some capability to do damage? I don't know yet. I don't think anybody else in the public does yet. But, look, America is not as spun up on protecting ourselves as somebody like me would be comfortable with. We like to think, well, this is America. I can just go about my life. 2 weeks after 9/11, everybody was whining because they were checking people at gates of going into military facilities, and it was slowing them down because they wanted to play golf at the military golf course. We tend to get really lazy intellectually really fast when it comes to threats. We clutch our pearls, and then the next minute look, this is just inconvenient, so it should stop. I think we're now taking actions that are a little more strenuous than that around our bases. The police forces are realizing there are people out there with that are radicalized, that want to do harm, both to governmental facilities and to civilians, particularly Jewish facilities. There's a lot of that going on, and meanwhile we're having a fight in Congress over funding DHS, who's supposed to be doing that job. So those are all issues, Dan, and I think things are tightening up. But again, Iran is not 10 feet tall. They're not even 5 feet tall, frankly. And they are not an existential threat now. They're not the same kind of threat they were a couple of weeks ago. We found out they had pretty long-range missiles that they were denying they were even interested in, right. And they actually had them. Okay, maybe the intel people weren't as stupid as we thought.
Washington Post columnist Mark Thiessen wrote over the weekend that Al-Qaeda has reconstituted itself in Iran. It's no longer in Pakistan or Iraq. It's reconstituted in Iran, and there's some concern that the Iranians, the Iranian theocrats, could join up with Al-Qaeda and use essentially dirty bombs, even though Al-Qaeda is Sunni. Obviously Iran also works with Hamas, which is Sunni. That this alliance of convenience or of necessity with other terrorist organizations that have found safe haven in Iran, is that a real concern, Or is, Al-Qaeda, like these other Iranian proxies, just sort of part of what has been built into the price?
It is a thing of concern. We don't want any of these various groups working together against us, but it is something we always watch. Even the unlikely ones like Al-Qaeda with Iran, right? Ideologically, theologically different, but they can make common cause against us because they all hate us. Russia fiddling around and sending things to Iran and giving them intel. To be honest with you, I'm hoping we're sending some strong messaging to Russia to stop the nonsense as it affects us directly, because we will hit them over that stuff. All those things are concerns, and whenever you do some sort of operation like this, there's going to be people who get upset about it and want to do something back to us. That's not like that's a surprise. Nobody in the administration said, "Oh, we'll do this and everybody in the world will be happy except the Iranians." Well, most of them are happy, but there's still going to be some people that would like to leverage this situation, particularly the discord inside the United States, where suddenly, you got Rachel Maddow, my favorite commentator, who was beating Trump up last year because it wasn't hitting Iran, and now suddenly hits it, and oh my God, it's an existential crime. And they're all like that. The entire Democrat Party is thinking like that. It's nuts.
Stephen Bucci served America 3 decades as an Army Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official. Now visiting fellow in the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Stephen, thank you as always.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, and we'll talk to you next time.
Talk to you then. And Stephen joins us on Chicago's Morning Answer.
Good morning. 53 degrees in Chicago on AM 560 The Answer. I'm John Cruz, the QC Kinetics Newsroom.